welcome back. So if phase 1 was rebuilding the engine and phase 2 was about 2 or 3 months of smacking, banging, welding, bending, crying, getting frustrated, but eventually getting the dry fit and getting everything to actually kind of getting nice shut lines and getting side panels to fit and all that malarkey. So that was all stage 2. I think we're now on to stage 3, which is starting to make it all look pretty. So this next one is all going to be about the frame. So my thinking is I need to sand all of the main elements of the main frame and get them basically tidy, which they're pretty close to. That's fine. It's just going to be a bit fiddly in places. That's relatively easy. I've then got to spend a lot more time working on the seat loop, because as you can see, it's a lot. You're actually going to see this, so there's a lot more work to be done on that and make that look really nice. And once it all, the basic looks good, I then got to put high build primer spray all over it, and then we're going to paint it and we're going to lacquer it, and hopefully that's going to look really nice, and that will be the end of that stage. And then finally we're going to work on all the little body parts, getting those look really good and bolting it all together. Got the suspension to sort out and all the cabling and electrics and all that, but for now we're just going to concentrate on trying to get the frame and the loop looking nice. Hello, long time no see. You won't notice this, but it's about 3-month gap since I've been working on the frame, and just life basically, loads of things going on and some holidays as well obviously, but we need to catch back up with where we are. So I've been working on the underside of the frame, and basically all the patches where there was a bit of surface rust, I've ground those back to bare metal, and I'm about to throw some rust inhibitor over all of those patches. I'm then going to let that dry off. I'm going to give it a very light sanding, and then I'm going to spray over all of those bits with some primer, just very quickly get it all sealed in. And then I'm going to, all this under here doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. Then I'm going to flip the frame right way up, and I'm going to spend a lot more time doing this seat loop here, which we'll see that when it's finished, so we need to make that look pretty, and I'll get back on with the filming with that. So for now I'm very quickly going to dab a load of rust converter all over the bare patches, which then probably means tomorrow I can sand those down and then get it sprayed with some primer. So that's the immediate plan. Nice to be back on it though, all motivated to crack on. Right, I realise that is complete overkill. It's nowhere near as bad as it looks on here, but it's not going to do any harm. So let that dry overnight. A bit more sanding, just probably hand sanding tomorrow, get that smoothed down, and then I'm just going to spray some etch primer over the top. So none of this really you're going to see when it's sprayed, so it's not absolutely perfect, but it's absolutely fine. But then following day, we've given it all a quick wipe down with some sandpaper, particularly on the areas where it's been treated and we've had the metal converted. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give it a quick wipe down all over with some panel wipe, get the dust off, and then I'm just going to dust with some primer over all the areas of the bare metal that I've been treating, so everything's covered basically. Well, there we go. So we've got all the bits that might rust are all covered. So I'm going to put this away for the evening, let it dry out, and then tomorrow, or whenever I next get out, we're going to make a start on the outside, which I'm quite looking forward to. It's actually going to be a bit easier to do than all of this, because this was a right fiddly, but I think that's like a bigger surface. Although it needs to be a better finish, it's actually going to be a little bit easier. I think I can even use a machine on bits of it, so I'm looking forward to getting on with that. But I feel like that's another little step closer. Okay, so we've basically got all the frame side of thing prepped. Not quite ready for painting. I'm going to give it a little light going over with some sandpaper before I put some high build primer on it. But that's basically done. So now we're going to start work on the seat loop. I hope you can hear all this because it's blowing a hoolie here. So the first job I'm going to do is, I don't know whether this is going to show up on camera, but whoever owned it previously has started to do some body work on this, but I'm guessing it was probably quite a long time ago. So I need to sand all this down, see where we're at. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a light skimming of body filler going over it, because there's lots of little dints and so on that I need to sort out. But at least this is a relatively flat surface, so I can do a lot of this initially with the mouse or some machinery rather than just by hand, because the frame was a pain in the arse and I've still got more to do on that, but that is what it is. Right, so we're going to make a start on this, see what it looks like underneath. Okay, so I've given it a once over with the machines and it's coming up really quite nicely. So next job, I want to try and get inside and smooth off this old primer. Looks like quite a high build one that's inside the side panel groove, so I'm hoping that my kind of Dremel type tool will clean those up and just make it in a position where it can take some proper primer and go from there. So I just want to try and get those smoothed off, and then it's going to be a case of, I think, going over with my hands with some paper, and then deciding what bits I need to kind of fill. Don't know how these will show up. Just finding out where all the low spots are. So it's going to be a little light skim, sand that back, and then we'll kind of see where we are. I've got some 320 grit, but I've also got a block which has got a little bit of give in it, so I'm hoping that's going to kind of fit to the contours, because there aren't any flat areas on this. So, rubbed all that down, got it as smooth as I can. I mean, it is really good already. So, I'm going to make it a tiny little bit better. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spray over all the bits of exposed metal with some primer, just to make sure we don't rust anymore. When that's done, I'm then going to go over this entire loop with a really fine tooth comb and spot all the little bits where I need to put some body filler in. I mean, it really is just tiny little dots. There's a couple of bits which have stood out a bit. There's a bit here that needs to be better, bit round there, but it's the tiny bits. I'm going to put a skim over these two corners down here, but the front end around here looks pretty good. So again, we'll see what it's like when I've got primer on it and take it from there. Typical, as I was about to do that, it was going to start raining, so we've shipped inside and we're going to have a go at doing it in here. So there we go, we've got a coating of anti-corrosion primer. So I'm hoping now that's all going to be tickety-boo. God, it's good when it's just in one colour. And then when all that dries, we're going to see where we need to put some filler to make it super smooth ready for some proper colour. Right, before I go into making this any prettier, I'm going to just try and do a little bit of future proofing inside the frame. No idea whether I really need to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I've just cleared out and make sure that the 2 drain holes are completely clear. So that's the first thing. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to fire some compressed air up inside here, and I'm expecting a load of detritus to come out the top of the frame. And then I've got some cavity wax which I'm going to spray in with this little tube, so I can feed some in there and get it sprayed up in there, round there, in through that tube, sprayed in there, down through the top, sprayed in there. So I'm hoping that's going to just make things a little bit more longevity inside the frame. That's the plan. Okay, so new day, everything has dried nicely. We've now got the wax oil all inside the frame, so that's all sealed off. What I haven't done yet is check the 2 drain plugs, so that's something to do, but obviously I've got a lot more spraying to do anyway. So next job is to go over this outside seat loop with a fine-tooth comb. I've got to mark all the areas by eye that need tiny bits of filling, and it is only tiny bits. Probably a lot of them, but tiny bits. So what I'm going to do is use this LED light and get it low down, and it kind of gives a good indication of, I don't know whether it's going to show up on camera, but just here there is a bit of a scratch. That's going to need some tiny bits of filler, and basically I'm going to go around with a pencil and I'm going to mark all of the bits where I need to put some filler, and we'll see what that looks like, and then we'll mix up some filler and get it on. Okay, so we've had a quick once over with the mouse. Got it reasonably okay, but I'm now gonna get a finer sandpaper and go over it more carefully. Don't think it's going to take long. Where I've gone back through to bare metal in a few places, I'll just put a quick squidge of primer over that. That didn't take long. Okay, so we've just done a quick sprinkling of some epoxy primer over where there was some bare metal showing. I'm going to go and have some lunch, and then when I come back to Savo, I'm going to just see if there's any final bits which may stand out. I can maybe see a couple of bits which I might need to just go back a tiny bit. I think there's been a flake of blob of paint gone there. I'll sort that out later as well. And when I've just done those few tiny little specks, we're in a position, I think, to spray the whole thing with the high build primer. I'm hoping I can do a decent enough job of everything inside here and all around the frame, so I don't have to sand it all down. I might give it a very light dusting, but which means I can then concentrate on the seat loop, and I'm going to try and get that really nice finish on the high build primer to then be in a position perhaps to have a go at painting. Time for some lunch, methinks. So in preparation to try and get some primer all over this, I've rigged up a system whereby I've got the whole thing up a little bit so I can get right down underneath here when I'm spraying, all underneath there, around the inside of the seat loop, and then also have a nice height for working on the important bits. So I've got a piece of wood which I've shaped, which goes up inside the steering column, and it just sits on one of the tables. And on this side I've got the old engine mount, or an old engine mount, and I've just made a little wooden frame which it sits in with the old cones, and that should give me access all round, so I'm quite pleased with that. Right, just because I'm doing the primer and it's going to get lightly sanded after anyway, I haven't rigged up the whole gazebo. I've just kind of put a wind block in here. It's nice and calm in this area here, so I'm just going to try and get a layer on, and we'll see what it looks like, and if it's crap I can redo it, no biggie. So I'm just mixing up a high build primer. Because it's a bit cooler, I'm going to use a fast hardener. I'm going to thin it down a little bit. I don't need to be massive, so I'm going to put a little bit of thinner in as well, and then we'll get some layers on. quick wipe down with some panel wipe. So I've been quickly dusting around all the inside of that with the sandpaper and just got the bits off, but that's all tickety-boo. I've been over the main seat loop, and the only bit that's kind of showing up, and I've no idea whether this is going to come out on camera, there's a little bit just there, and it will be seen, so I think I'm going to have to just get the tiniest bit of filler on that bit to sand down, and then while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to make a start on the rest of the loop with some wet sandpaper, get a really nice finish on that, and then this thing is basically ready for a lick of paint. Right, finished, got it all lovely and super smooth. So I'm going to get another nice day. Unfortunately it's a lovely day now, but some muggins has got to go and cut the grass, so I'm going to get on with that, and then maybe tomorrow, if we've got a decent enough day, we'll get up what's become my painting gazebo, set that up in the garden, and we'll have a go at putting on some base coat and clear coat and see what it looks like. I've been kind of working out in my imaginary spray gun where I can get in and get into all the nooks and crannies. All of this will be absolutely fine. I'm going to put a little light dusting on, that'll be fine, and then I'm really going to try and do the best job that I can on the seat loop, and knowing that if I'm not happy with how it's gone on the seat loop, then I've only got to sand that, which is basically a flat surface, which is fairly easy to sand. I don't have to worry about trying to sand all of this again all around here, because that's a pain in the bum to sand. So that'll be our next bit of video, bit of painting. Right, so let's have a bit of a catch up regarding yesterday in spray painting. It was all going swimmingly well. In fact, going better than well. It was going really good. I had a really nice finish especially over the seat loop. Frame's absolutely fine, I'm totally happy. There's a few runs on the frame, but they're fine, I'm not worried about those. You can see where there's like a little bit of a run there, and there's definitely something inside here, but that's fine. I then got a really good layer that was just flowing out really well on the seat loop. I thought, oh, this is absolutely fantastic. But then it got a couple of runs, so there was a couple down the front here, and then there was another one that was particularly bad just down there. That's okay, now I had to deal with them, so I kind of thinned out those areas with some paint thinner. Once it had dried, I sanded it down, which obviously that did take quite a while to do that, and then I was able to just spray back over the top again. All worked really well. However, what I think has happened, I'm sure this will look really good on camera, and some bits have come out really nice, but the very last coat that I put over the seat loop, which is the bit you're going to see, I think had been sitting in the spray gun for too long whilst I was dealing with all the runs and so on, because that was actually like at least an hour and a half to sort the runs out. And then when I put the very final layers back over the top of the seat loop, it's gone a little bit orange peel. It's not horrendous, but I know I can do better. I don't know if it will show up better with that LED light. Perhaps it'll show up there. I know I can do better than that. So what I'm going to do is, there's no clear coat on this yet. This is literally just the base coat. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to sand down the whole of the seat loop. It's only going to take half an hour. I don't know, 600, 800 grit, not sure. Deal with, there's a tiny bit of a run there, although you won't really see it because it'll be under the badge. But I'm going to basically just worry about the seat loop, which is much easier to work with. I don't need to do any more paint spraying on the frame bit. I just need to concentrate on that, and that's a lot less daunting. So I'm going to sand it down, wipe it down, and then I'm going to respray 1 or 2 layers of fresh paint over the seat loop, followed by clear coat over everything. Okay, so I've given it all a good sanding down, so it's all matte and smooth. So we're going to respray all this now. I'm not going to keep filming every single bit of me sanding and every bit of me spraying, because actually on camera it looks exactly the same regardless of what I'm actually doing. So I'll kind of catch up after each phase. It also slows me down a lot when I'm filming as well. So basically I'm going to dust this off, I'm going to panel wipe it down, I'm going to get it back in the gazebo, which I've got a heater in there warming it up, mix up some paint and we'll slap some paint. I'm just working on the seat loop though this time, not worrying about the frame at all. That's going to tack off 20-25 minutes, something like that, and then I'm going to put some clear coat over the whole thing. That is the plan. So as I said, I didn't do loads of filming while I was doing the respraying. It's just very much the same as you've already seen, but I can't begin to tell you how pleased I am with the result. It looks so good. I'm hoping this comes out on the camera. The bits you're going to see are just brilliant. There's like no orange peel, It just looks like it's come out of the factory, maybe even better. I'm so pleased. The frame itself, which you're never going to see, actually looks pretty good. But the bit you are going to see looks fantastic. I think it shows up better as well when there's a good light on it. You can see that the light's reflected, it's not kind of orange peel. I'm so pleased that I didn't rush it, went back, sanded it all down. Took my time, read it, so it was an extra day, but what the hell does that matter? So that brings that chapter of the build to a close.